Welcome to Why Most Theology Debates Fail. We're continuing this series. This is episode 2. And what we're asking right now is why is it that you can use the same words but have different meanings? There's a lot of confusion that occurs in debates because of that. And as you can see here from this image, you have one person saying faith and they got crossing a bridge. Then you got another person saying faith over here and they mean like climbing a mountaintop. So they're using the same vocabulary, but they have different concepts in mind and come to different conclusions. Now, we know that the idea of faith, the definition of faith and how it's used is way more debated, way more complicated than that. But this helps you visualize the idea that these people, one's got a bridge and one's got a mountain in mind here. All right. So the main assumption is that whenever you have the same word, that it has the same meaning. Most debates begin with this assumption, and most confusion begins here too. And, you might say, well, how can that be? No, you've had lots of debates and you've had lots of discussions where the people have differentiated their meaning of words. Even if that's true, let's just say that they got the word right in their proposition. They got their words right in their opening. Or sometimes not even in their opening. They define a definition different than you. Or what's even worse is whenever they don't define a definition and leave it, those issues do occur. But the thing is that if you have everything right in your debate opening, by the time you start getting into rebuttal or maybe even cross-exam, you find out that there's a miscommunication. One person's talking about a bridge and another person's talking about a mountain, okay? So there's an assumption. We take it for granted that the other person is going to understand this. One benefit that I like with studying with my wife, because she's Filipino, is that she makes me help become more clear. I even feel like I'm saying an unclear statement as I'm speaking now. It helps me slow down, helps me think, and helps me communicate because you're studying with somebody of a different language. She's smarter than me, wiser than me, but the language barrier helps me slow down. And we've been studying together for years. Whenever we go in and we would study before classes I done or other things I did, it always helped me. I call her my governor, like a governor that's on a vehicle. It slows you down like a truck so that it can't speed or whatever. And so that helps me. Okay. I want to eliminate as much confusion as possible in debates and in communication at all. But there's always these assumptions involved. Here's an ordinary example from ordinary language. You see, the reality is that when we get in these debates, sometimes when we're talking about theological terms or exegetical terms or whatever term you're using to discuss the Bible and theology, people act like the words operate differently than they do in normal language. And that doesn't happen all the time, but it does happen. And so the thing is, you got to think about how ordinary language works. It doesn't work by you saying the same word and has the same meaning. No, you got it. For example, you got the word bank. Okay, you got one bank that's a river bank and another bank, which is a financial bank. Okay, same word, different meaning, context, determined sense. And in this particular example, the word river before it helps, and the word financial helps. But the reality is that there's other words that we could use, like trunk is used always as a good example of that. A trunk of an elephant, a trunk of a car, a trunk of a tree. Those examples like that. And you could think of lots of others as well. So the real question is not what word is being used, but in what sense it's being used. Yeah, of course, when you're doing your study, you want to find out, okay, this word corresponds to the Strong's or Blue Letter Bible or whatever you're doing there. Or if you want to go, more professional, then the Badag or a Hilat, these different lexicons that are out there. But the thing is that just because the same word is being used underneath the English text, and sometimes people do this in the English text, Like even when you're King James, even among you ever thought about this? Even among King James readers, they have different views. And the reason being is because they're defining the words differently based on different contexts, based on different factors. So regardless of that, whether you're dealing with the English and the King James or some other English translation, it's always helpful if you can have access to studying the Greek or the Hebrew behind it. Okay. And that could be through tools like Strong's, Vines, the basic ones. We could talk about all that in the future. But the point is that it's not just because it's using the same word there. You've got to figure out what the sense is, its usage. There's a saying, words don't have meaning, they have usage. Now, some people would say, no, there is a latent form of a word, a meaning of a word, but I understand what people are saying whenever they both argue from both sides. And, but the thing is that if you ask in what sense, it's being used, it'll go a long way. So some other questions that we could ask is, what function is the word performing? This is how we can start thinking about the sense. Now, there's more technical ways to do it, but if you start thinking like this, what function is the word performing? What audience is being addressed? What issues being addressed? And what categories operating in this context? See, it's not just about the word, it's about the sense. Now, here's the issue, is that this happens in debates, and we do it equivocating, as they call it. Basically, when a definition shifts, you're saying it one way, and then you say it another way over here. And that happens. But the other thing that happens is, like what this slide is focusing on, is that one person says the mountain, and the other one thinks the bridge. So people think they're answering each other. They think they're being clear with each other. But a lot of times they're answering different questions, And so that's very important, because if you're using a word in a particular sense, then and they're using it in a different sense, this person may be addressing this particular question, and this person over here is talking about a different question or a different issue. And that comes out in cross-exam a lot of times. So same words, different meanings, lead to different conclusions. See, before we harmonize, you could use the word correlation. Before you try to connect ideas within a book, outside of a book, there's some things that we should think about first, okay? Are both authors addressing the same question? Is it the same audience? Is it the same issue? And is it the same sense? Now, we'll go in more detail later on about exact procedures, but I'm just trying to bring up some issues that occur in debates and why debates fail. Now, they succeed for their intended purpose, but we're focusing on their failure in this series. What we need to do is we need to distinguish things before we try to harmonize, before we try to synthesize, before we try to put things together. We need to find out what sense the word is being used. We need to categorize the use of the word, the function of the word. People call it observational tags, semantic tags. There's different words that you could use for it. But the reality is that we need to do it whatever we call it. See, the thing is that context changes meaning. The same sentence can mean different things depending on the situation. Like if you're at a doctor's office and your doctor says you need to rest for a few days, that deals with you need to recuperate. You don't need to be walking on your leg right now. You don't need to be talking if you just went to the dentist. And so basically the meaning is avoid physical activity and get plenty of sleep. But if you're at work, right, and they say you need to rest for a few days, technically it depends how you see that. A lot of times when you're watching a movie, when a person is messing up, let's just call it that, they're messing up at work, and their boss will kind of tell them, I think you need to take some time off right now, right? That's a different way, a different sense And this is later on going to go into what we call speech act theory, but we're not there right now. But if your boss is coming to you saying, man, you've been working hard, you need to rest a few days, it means a whole nother thing. Now, I don't even know if that happens anymore, but it would mean take time off from work to relax or recover, you know? Maybe when they recognize burnout, you know, maybe it happens in that situation. But the point is that you can say the same sentence. You need to rest for a few days, and it means something different depending on the context. Whether you're in the doctor's office, who you're talking to, or whether you're at work talking to your boss. Always consider the context to understand what is really being said. So again, I'm emphasizing this idea that we need to distinguish before harmonizing, because otherwise we can't build unity on unclear terms. I think it was Aristotle that said is before we can debate or argue anything, we have to agree on terms, or at least define our terms. So number one, we see that we defined the question. What is the author trying to answer? What issue is on the table? Number two, we need to define the terms. What do the key words mean in this context? Number three, we need to determine the context. Who is the audience? What is the setting? What comes before and after? Four, and there's different levels of context that we'll talk about later on. Four, then we need to harmonize or correlate or synthesize. Now that we know what the text means, we can rightly compare and unify. And then we got a puzzle piece over here, right? Each one of these, the blue, the green, the orange, the purple, come together and make the full puzzle. And this creates this true unity comes from true understanding. So the distinction is not division, it's clarity. Clarity before unity, truth before agreement, and understanding before conclusions, right? Don't y'all just love how AI writes? Now, I put my own stuff in here, but it made the slides, so I'm not going to argue with it. All right, so the big discovery that we're getting from this first lesson is there are many theological contradictions that occur because people begin with different definitions. One person has a view of faith, justification, repentance, kingdom, works. They're using the same words, but they have different meanings, especially if you're debating Protestant versus Catholic Orthodox, or even now as I'm articulating my particular view of justification, which is a refinement of the Protestant position, I'm going to have to be clear up front and state those meanings. So we are using the same words, we have different meanings, and we come to different conclusions. So when definitions differ, conclusions will too. All right, so here's the takeaway. The heart of this comes down to three truths. The same word can carry different meanings. People may use the same word but assign different senses to it. Example, justified in James 2 can be vindicated, not internally saved. Two, meaning comes from context. The author, audience, situation, and purpose determine what the words mean. Context is not optional. It's the key to meaning. Three, clarification must come before harmonization. You can't build unity on unclear terms. Define first and harmonize. Distinguish first, harmonize second. Okay? So it's just repeating the same thing that we have here, because I mean that's how this series we're going from basic and building up. So there will be repetition for learning and all of that, but we will be going deeper and deeper throughout this. And so if this benefited you, share it with somebody else that you think it will benefit. You know, I didn't used to say subscribe because they recommend YouTubers to not do that anymore, or give the thumbs up or hit notification. And for a long time now, I've been saying just check out old content, both new and old. It's all good. But the reality is that people forget. People take things for granted. And I know I do it sometimes. I'll be watching a stream, and if JP doesn't say, hey, where's my likes at? I don't hit the like button because I forget. I'm engrossed in what's on the video, or I'm in the chat having a discussion, you know. So I just wanted to mention, I'm not going to mention that in every one of these videos, but yeah, I just want you to see that I'm just easing into this, okay? So yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. God bless.